this is first of all, this is home. This is family.
DC's
talking
home.
to family. DC's home.
Howard's home. Public anything is home. Yes.
Talk about, before we even get into the book, talk about these past few days for you, Michelle Miller. What has it been like out here on this book tour?
Oh my gosh, it's been a whirlwind. And first of all, this isn't like a publisher's. Back in the day, publishers would lay out the cities you go to. No, this is like homegrown, my friends showing up, showing out, giving me love. It is the most amazing experience of when your friends are like coming up, throwing you events. I mean, it's so incredible.
It shows how loved you are.
I feel it. I really feel it. And if I didn't know it before, I better know it now.
And we definitely want you to read from the book. But before we do that, talk a little bit about the why. Why this book and why now?
So I hate this question because, my husband's been asking me to write a book since I've known him, and he
Your
said,
husband's name?
Mark Morial. He is the president of the National Urban League, former New Orleans mayor. When I met him, I was a journalist, and you can read all about it in the book. But he told me, I'm so happy you got this off your chest. And I was like, did I get it off my chest? And he said, oh yeah, this was on your chest. And I said, well, how do you know what was on my chest? He said, because when we just started to date, you said the one thing I couldn't do was abandon you. And I said that? He said, oh yeah, you said that. I didn't know anything about your situation, your circumstances at birth. He said, but I was like, whoa, there's something there. And so having, friends tell me, wow, that's an incredible story. I always thought, there are a lot of people out there like me. Why would anyone want to hear my story? I was never really, I never felt compelled to tell it. More importantly, I didn't know how to tell it. But in 2020, I was assigned a story by my senior producer who said, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, that I needed to do a reporter's notebook. And through my experience in covering social justice issues, policing, the clash within Black and brown communities, the racial dynamics of it all, I should give people an idea of why this seemed different. So I pulled out my phone and literally the experiences from 1992 and the LA riots after the acquittal of the LA Four through Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, and the Emmanuel Nine, and you name it, just poured out of me. And 20 seconds into this 3.5-minute piece, I turned the camera around and said, racism has impacted me all my life, born into the trauma and unrest of 1967. I became out of the union of a father who adored me and a mother who to this day does not acknowledge my existence. And so
you did this on the air.
I did it on the air. And I think what I was trying to do, I don't know, sometimes if you ever been in a situation where you've like poured yourself into something and you just let it come out. Have you written something? Have you spoken something? Created something and it just came out? And it was just like, that's what this piece was. Literally verbatim out of my mouth, stream of consciousness, the whole story. I handed it over to the producer and she was like, whoa, are you sure you want to say this? And I was like, if they don't cut it out, yeah. And Gayle King tossed into the piece and came out of the piece. And, Gail, she has that quizzical look on her face. It's so cute. She was like, Michelle, I know we're talking about the social justice movement, but I cannot get over what you said. Did I hear you right? And we like such the, reaction of somebody at home, right? And I said, yep, you heard me right. And literally 37 minutes after the story aired, a publisher from HarperCollins emailed me and said, whoa, that's a book. Can I publish it? And so what I say, opportunity presented itself. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, really, it was a heaven sent engagement, and I had so many gifts of advice along the way. A gift from a publisher from a competing house was the person who gave me my author. A person who had written a book for a competing house helped me with my proposal. She also offered this, "Are you sure?" ? Because there's no going back. I don't really know if I have the answer. I think I'm sure, but I'm not quite sure if I'm ready for anything negative to come back at me. Because I talk about a lot of stuff in that book.
Yes, you do.
And in fact, I was in an interview today, and it was he seemed rather friendly, but it was interesting because he brought some things up about some controversial things now, and I had to, like the issue of CRT. Mm-hmm. And he said, I would imagine that, there are things that you say in the book that you might not be able to say on the air. And I said, well, how do you define CRT? Because I said, I never mentioned CRT in the book. He said, yeah, but I know. And I said, yeah, but what do you define that as? And he gave a brilliant answer. And I said, everything I talk about in the book I talk about truth, I talk about accuracy, I talk about honesty, I talk about transparency. I said all of those things are what make up a distinction between what I do in my profession in the present and what I hope historians have done about the past. But his story is his history, is his story, right? And so it's important for people to understand it's necessary for us to have a full conveyance, a full range of everyone who is a participant in this country to have a piece of it. And their journey, i.e. their contribution, should be showcased in a way, because all of us have created this. And so if you're taking issue with me saying that I think that we need to be more inclusive in our history, then I don't see anything wrong with that. Because that's what I do every day. I select stories that I am making sure people know about. Mm-hmm. Isn't that
that's what we do?
That's what we do.
Right.
We decide whether or not a story is either one, worthy of telling someone, two, whether or not there's an aha moment of interest, three, if there is a groundswell of need to know. All of those things factor into why we tell you the stories we tell you. And so I don't see how that's any different from me saying there are stories that have been untold in the history of this nation. And I tell those stories. Like and I always say there are three things that I bring to that I think are necessary in one of my pieces. I get 5 to 7 minutes sometimes, which is unheard of in network television. And I always say, I want people to learn something they didn't know, obviously that was true. Two, I want them to have an aha reaction. Like there's something that hit them. There's a reaction in some way, somehow, meaning they weren't expecting it.
They weren't expecting it.
And then three, I hope that in some way it moves them in some direction forward. in some capacity.
One of the things I also want to talk about is the title, Belonging. Where did that come from and why?
So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm a kid who didn't feel as though she belonged in a space or place at a given time, and I was seeking to belong. I was seeking to fill a void, seeking to find my place, and that's what belonging means to me.
Are you still seeking
Yes,
after all your accomplishments?
yes. I mean,
Why?
that's a truthful answer. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think, are we ever really satisfied? Are we ever really full? Are we ever really, I'm being perfectly honest in the needs. There's still things that, and places that I don't feel like I belong. And yet I still feel accomplished. I still feel loved. I still feel, and yet I don't know what that says about me. But like I said, it's a journey, and I'm still on it, I guess.
Before I ask you additional questions, I think what we want to do is we want to hear from you. We want to hear one of your favorite passages. If
Oh
you
my,
could
don't
read-
do that. You're supposed to tell me
You-
what
you-
you tell me what you
tell-
want me to read.
you-
No, I'm not doing my favorite, because one, I'm not prepared to tell you what, because that's not even my book. That's your book. But I do appreciate how marked up it is.
It's like the old folks' Bible.
Yes, it is.
Yellow lines all through it.
I mean, what do you guys want to hear? Do you want to hear about my youth? Do you want to hear? I mean, there's so many parts of it.
You know what,
Do you want to encapsulate, my Howard University days? You want to know what I thought when I started
when you
looking?
start looking for your mom.
Well, okay, then go. Let's. You find that page. It's in the. Here, boy. You better ask me another question, because you should have been better prepared.
Wow, it's your book.
I know.
I want to hear a little bit about looking for your, trying to have a relationship with your birth mother and how that has affected you as a wife, as a mother, and as a journalist.
Go to 176.
Oh, now she know where to
Yeah.
go.
So wait, what was that question again?
The question is how what's going on with your birth mother, trying to find your birth mother, the abandonment of
Okay.
your mother, how that affected you as a wife, as a mother of your own children, and then as a journalist. Ooh.
So I tell you, it's so funny. Serendipity is like part of like my life. It's so crazy. So I'll start with this. I had a book signing in Atlanta, and two people showed up, one who I'd never met in my life, the other who was the person who found my mother. I had not seen him in more than 30 years. And he's a distant relative, but we just, after a dear friend of ours passed away, we just lost touch. And he doesn't live in Atlanta. He happened to be a friend of a friend who was coming, and she said, it's a book party, this woman. He said, okay, I'll go with you. And now I'm reunited with the man who basically allowed this book to happen at the book party in Atlanta, which I was there. The reason I went to Atlanta, when I went to Atlanta, was because another woman in the book was being honored by the city of Atlanta with a statue, the first statue of an African-American woman in the city of Atlanta. So yeah, the second person was a babysitter of my dad's. And the first question she asked me, and you're not going to know because you didn't read the book. Who read the book? Anybody read the book yet? Okay. You know what she asked me? Do you know what happened to Adrian?
Oh, yeah, your sister. And that was
And
the first time you found out about this.
that was the first time I met a babysitter of my dad's who I said, okay, tell me all about what you know. So Adrian was my sister, and she disappeared. And I'm not going to tell you why or how. You're going to have to read it in the book. But so I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how that throughout my life, those serendipitous, kismetic moments have just fallen out of the sky for me. So how has...
The abandonment issues, right.
So right, I'm getting there.
Yeah, okay.
You see this one, two, the third word in that sort of subtext title of mine is search, right? So I have always been in search of. I have been in search of mother figures. I've been in search of belonging and placement. I have been yearning for fullness. So to fill the void of absence that was there. So obviously, okay, name the three things you wanted me to.
Wife, mother,
okay,
journalist.
wife. So I wanted a husband who, I call him the Big Five. Do you remember that? Okay, smart.
Oh, yeah.
Ambitious, conscious, funny, and he had to love me to death. Yeah, and that's what I got. I think I'm one of them. I kind of separated because I think ambition, whatever. But he also had to be attractive. That was the other thing, right? To me, right? But and so I was in search of that person, right? And I found him, right? I was in search of a family that was whole. And what did I get? I got a family that almost, a first daughter in my life, almost mirrored my life. It was my husband's daughter. And her life was very similar to mine. Mm-hmm. Then, what was the other one?
As a journalist.
Oh, what do I do?
Searching.
Always in search of a good story, always in search of truth, always in search of finding the what, the who, the why, the when, the how. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question.
All right, thank you.
Would you read a few paragraphs?
Did you find my page?
I had the page open and then you closed it.
I closed it, 176. 176.
Can you tell we just met?
Yes. Did you tell them how we met?
We'll get into that.
Okay, here's the part about so the chapter 16, my mother reprise. After a lifetime of longing, years haunted by tides of self-doubt at the ambiguity of having a mother while having no mother, it turned out to be absurdly easy to trace the whereabouts of Laura Hernandez. I found her within a week, helped by a college friend who was now, I won't tell you, you'll read it in the book. I had told him my story back when we were at Howard, and when he heard I was now searching for the woman who had left me behind at birth, he offered to run her maiden and married names and birthday through. Almost as soon as he entered her identifying details, she popped up on his screen, apparently living with her attorney husband, a couple of hours south in San Diego. It was pure serendipity, because if Laura Hernandez had registered her car anywhere but in the state of California, my search for her would surely have been more protracted. Though she now went by her married identity, I continued to think of her by the name she had carried when I was born, as it made the idea of this stranger being my mother feel less remote. I reminded myself, half a Hernandez too.
Now, the name, Laura Hernandez, we realized early on in the book, page 3, I think, that the names have been changed.
Yes.
So explain to us why the name Laura Hernandez is not her real name.
Because I told her I would never out her. When I found her, so I had the number. I remember being at my first television job, the Orange County News Channel in Orange County, California, Santa Ana. And one of my friends at the station was a sportscaster, and he was a sports producer. And he said, I told him the story, and he was fascinated by this. And he was like, what do you need me to do? I said, just stand in the edit bay while I make this call. And I called, and she answered, and I said to her, my name is Michelle Miller. Do you know who I am? And there was a pause for about 4 seconds. It seemed like forever. And she said, "Yes, I know who you are." And it was like, I expected like that whole television reunion kind of scenario. Like,
I've been
oh,
waiting
she,
all this
oh,
time.
all my life.
My baby.
Right. And I just told her, I fibbed. I said, I have a story in Sacramento. I'm a journalist. I have a story in Sacramento. I have a story where you live, and essentially, I said I would go there, and she agreed to meet me, and she said she would only have an hour, and I said that would be fine. I said, listen, I don't want to cause any problems. My father's ill. He wanted me to find you. He wanted me to ask details of my DNA history, and I promise not to be a problem. I won't tell anybody. And so no matter how my feelings changed on the subject of my mother, I've always honored that to some degree. There's just a little thing I did that if you read the book, it was kind of Machiavellian. And that was because I was angry. And I reached out to someone. You read that part, right? I don't want to reveal everything about the book. But I will say again that that person's story mirrored my story.
Are you still angry?
A little bit. Because I think the whole reason I think I wrote the book, and it parallels with my view on history. I firmly believe that acknowledgement is power, and whether you're talking about an individual or you're talking about a marginalized, unacknowledged history of people, I just believe that it's so significant to let people know that they, one, matter, that they are recognized, and they are, part of your space, place, and family. And it's ironic that I feel this way so much about, our American story, because it is my story. And so I have a problem with the fact that there is, and I say it in the book, I am nothing to be ashamed of.
Well.
And so I recognize.
One of the things that jumped out to me, and it also surprised you in the book, is that when you were 24, I believe, at the age of 24 when you met her, and she told you that your father was the love of her life.
That kind of blew me away. So do you guys understand, like, my situation? Maybe you're a little...
The racial...
So, no, it's okay. So sometimes I don't state it. So I'm my mother's secret. I was born from an extramarital union between an African-American trauma surgeon and a hospital worker. And she, an Hispanic or Latina hospital worker whose parents were, working class from, I'm not really clear on this, but, hailed from Mexico at some point, and were, hardworking and proud people, but were part of kind of a mantra in Los Angeles. When you're at the bottom rung and, being an immigrant or a first-generation American in America at that time, in California, particularly of Latin origin, you were sort of like,
bottom.
at the bottom rung, or considered, not you were the bottom rung, considered by, the racism of the time. And I think people are always trying to climb the ladder of, how do I say this? It's hard for people to understand who haven't whose family hasn't really experienced this, but you're trying to assume that American dream, which is associated with whiteness, right?
Right.
Is that like,
That's
I
it.
hate saying that, but it's
It is
true.
what it is.
It's
It is what it
true.
is. Right.
Yeah, it's like, so they were in the process of assimilating, like they found out that she was dating, not she was pregnant with, or she was dating, and not that even he was married, but he was just a black man, right? And her, I think it was her brother, she explained to me, that just said it's him or us, and that the parents were just too meek to really, or the mom maybe I don't know, but there was a line in the sand, him or us. And she said, I love my father so much, and I needed my family, and your father was adamant on having you. I'm Catholic, and there was no way I wasn't going to have you. And so my dad was, they devised this plan because she didn't want anybody to know about it. And the plan was that they concocted a scheme that she had gone to do a fellowship in Chicago, but she stayed in California, and she would write letters to her family. He would send them to a friend in Chicago, and then the Chicago friend would drop the letters in the mail.
Elaborate plan.
Yeah. He was good at that kind of stuff. Really good at that stuff.
And not only was she Latina, but she could also pass for white. Is that correct?
Well, I
that
don't know
fair?
if she was. So, she talked about having an awakening of her indigenous roots. Like, she went to Mexico, to her father's hometown, and how freeing that was in the 60s. And was what attracted her to my father was, he was. So my dad was a civil rights activist. He was a political activist who first black on the Compton City Council. He was involved in presidential politics, was a delegate of Robert F. Kennedy's, was the first doctor to get to him when he was shot at the Ambassador Hotel that night, which was the subject of a story that I did, which as I say it was like the discovery at CBS News of who I was and telling stories. But it was my story, right? And it was a story that my son dared me to tell, because he said, Mommy, I don't believe that this man you say is your father did all of that. So I was like, this little whippersnapper. Tell me. Thank goodness he did, because the story that came out of it was incredible.
Wow.
It was incredible. So I urge everyone, and watch the original version. It's like June 5th or 6th, 2013, the 45th anniversary. You want to hear another bit of serendipity?
Yes.
You guys see this picture? You like the picture? Oh, thank you. So I can't take credit for it. Is Kirk McCoy in the audience? Okay. Kirk McCoy is a Los Angeles Times photographer who was sent out to take this picture of me on a Saturday. I believe it was June 19th, June 18th or 19th of 2020. Stephen Battaglio, who's a writer for the LA Times, has been trying to find a peg to do a story on me because he was a fan of CBS Saturday Morning. But
I am too.
yay! And so he liked my story. He just felt like, there was just nothing that just kind of pushed me up there. That story that I did that caught all that attention became the peg. So he sent Kirk out to take this picture. Kurt is a kind of mild-mannered photographer, and he looked at me. He said, do you remember me? And he said, I've been working at the LA Times for 35 years. He said, do you remember the story we did on the South Central Cowboys in Compton? And I said, of course I remember. That was my favorite story that summer that I interned at the LA Times. He said, I was your photographer. I said, whoa. I said, Kurt, I said, do you know what story is running tomorrow on CBS Sunday Morning? He said, no. I said, a story on the black urban cowboys of South Central Los Angeles in Compton.
Full circle.
What are the odds of that? Crazy. And it was Juneteenth. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know, that leads, we will open up to questions. I'm just going to throw one thing out there before we open up to questions. I'm not sure how we're going to do the questions, but we're going to get to your questions. Oh, I see microphones back there. Oh, they got mics. Okay. So, Michelle went to Howard, HU.
See, nobody said read from Howard University. I'm going to read from Howard University.
We don't read from Howard University.
I'm going to read, I'm going to read you from Howard University.
But we want to talk about, there's actually some Hilltoppers here.
All right.
And so I want to hear a little bit more about when you were a student journalist at Hilltop, doing a story on the AKAs.
Ooh.
And what happened with that. If you could talk a little bit.
Are there any skew ears in here? All right. So there is a happy ending to that story.
There is a happy ending, but let's not get to the ending first.
Okay.
Let's start the beginning.
No. It's so I was like this. I didn't know. Okay, first of all, I knew nothing about the Divine Nine, really. I knew about AKA. You know, I'd seen Pink and Green before, but I didn't really know like what went into it. I was completely kind of oblivious to it. That's in spite of the fact that my grandmother went to Howard University.
Big Mama.
Big Mama went to Howard University in 1912. I think she became an AKA 1914, which was the year after the March on Washington, the Women's March on Washington, in which women, both Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority sisters and Delta Sigma Theta sorority sisters marched the march. The Deltas marched in unison, and the AKs, I understand it, kind of broke through the ranks to quote unquote integrate the march, because they told the black women that they were relegated to the back, and that was the only way that they could participate. So as the story's told to me by my Aunt Edna, Big Mama was asked by her sorority sisters. It had to have happened before 1914. But they said, do you want to pledge this one, or do you want to pledge this one we're starting up? So it was like she was asked at a certain point. She said, no, I want to pledge the one with the girls that are still going to be here, who are my friends. So it was just a question with my grandmother of, I'll stay with the ones who I know, because they were all fabulous women, right? Who just wanted to do different things. That wasn't your question. The question was...
I'm glad you recognized that, but go on.
So what's really funny was when I figured out I wanted to be a journalist, there was a woman that was one of my classmates named Linda Looney, and she knew she was going to be a broadcast journalist, and I was just so entranced by her ability to knock out like that whole BJ voice. She was so poised, so incredibly confident, and I was like, and pretty is you. I just like, she was a pretty Georgia peach, and I was not. I was like this wild-haired, clumsy, kind of like awkward, loud, unfiltered girl.
Can you believe that?
Yeah. I know some of you can attest to it. Is that Jennifer Thomas up there? She remembers.
Professor Thomas.
Yes, Professor, Doctor. So what happened was I was setting out to go do a story, and several of the Divine Nine had just gotten back on campus because there were some some issues from a few years before.
Around pledging.
Yes, around pledging, and I was going to go get a scoop. I was telling Magdalene Chube this story. She said, "Oh my God, don't tell me my name's in the book." I was like, "Yeah." and so basically, I saw the Ivy pledges walking along. So I was like, I'm going to follow them in. So I followed them into the den, and like as I walked in, the last one on the line said, "You can't come in here." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because you can't come in here." I was like, "Well, can you get somebody who can talk to me?" And she said, "Okay." And out walks Magdala, who was the basilisk of the chapter. And I don't know, I mean, I detail it all in the book, but it's really hilarious because in telling the story, because I always think, why wasn't I a member of that 1980?
8, 7?
You were 87. I would have been 88. No. Yeah, it would have been 87. You're so good. You were 86. Oh, I would have been with you? Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, so what? So I had this conversation. It didn't go too well. It's funny how it did end up, because I'm very good friends with said former basilisk of Alpha chapter, of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And but the funny thing was, there was that incident of not being really, what is the word you would say? Sort of not really knowing my place, or not really being discerning.
You were a journalist. You were trying to get the story.
Well, but how dare I think that wouldn't go unnoticed? Because when I tried to pledge, I mean, you just, like, why would I think that they wouldn't forget that? Like, when she's a journalist,
I was just doing my job.
No, I'm thinking, oh, she's trying to tell, like, why would you trust me? I'm trying to do a scoop. What is she trying to infiltrate? I'm like, and I literally, as I was writing the book, I was like, oh. And to top it, oh yeah, there's just how you could be so clueless, because you know your own intent, right? I wanted to do the story and I wanted to scoop, but no, if I had agreed to do this, I wouldn't divulge any secrets. But that kind of naivete and obliviousness, I have to quite be very frank about it, is like it never has quite left me, which I think kind of keeps me in this neat little package of still having a bit of innocence about me, or I don't learn very well.
But both of those work to your advantage as a journalist, because people want to tell you something over and over and over again until you get it.
Maybe so.
There you go. All right. Any questions in the audience? Any questions in the audience here? Yes, ma'am. Sir. I can't see.
Ma'am.
Ma'am, I can't. Lights in
That's
my
okay,
eyes,
don't
baby.
worry.
Lights in my eyes.
Why did you want to become a reporter?
Why? You're asking why?
Yes.
Why? I love like asking people questions. One, I love getting to know things. I always wanted the scoop. I always wanted to be the first to know. And
then tell it.
Yes, and tell it. And I think like world events always fascinated me. I was a 7-year-old newsie. I would turn on world news and network news at like 6 o'clock in the morning, back in the day when it would come on at 6 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, in short, I like to be in the know. How about that?
Yes, ma'am, up there. Then we'll
Yes,
come down.
my name is Bashetta Merritt, and I'm here to brag because I taught under these people at Howard, and I want to let you know I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
So proud of you.
you were one of my favorite teachers.
Hey, Dr. Merritt.
Man,
Talk about diva,
it's
Dr. Merritt. Yeah.
It's teachers like Dr. Merritt. Let me just say, teachers like her made Howard University. And the best part
Yeah.
about
Very
Howard was there was such a spectrum of teachers. This is my cousin Cheryl. Hey!
Hey, cousin Cheryl.
But there was such a spectrum. One of my other favorite teachers was Dr. Victor Peloso. He was Portuguese, and he taught the history of the Black diaspora. And he would say things like, I would say, wait, Dr. Pelosi, Dr. Peloso, are you telling me that they knew about this stuff in Africa and they still lied about it? He said, they sure as heck did. And so, like, having this perspective, for like seeing this man who was white, who was like down in the, like, really digging into the historical authenticity of what Africa meant, and what it meant across the divide and the diaspora beyond, and the fact that people knew our story, they just didn't tell it to us correctly. And you know, him
That's how it
sharing
is.
this amazing, like this need to like be someone to impart that history to the next generation. I just found that really, that was restorative for me.
Dr. Miller reminds me, we'll get to another question here. When I was a sophomore, and Michelle Miller and Stanley Barrett at ESPN and Gus Johnson, the voice of basketball, they were the stars. They were the stars. And Dr. Lee Thornton.
Oh, Dr. Thornton.
Dr. Thornton, God rest her soul, was the professor. Carol Dudley up there? Hey, Miss Dudley! And so Dr. Thornton and Dr. Kagwa,
Yes.
they anointed Stanley Barrett and Michelle Miller as stars.
Did they?
Yes, they did.
They did?
Yes, they did. And I said, I want to be a star. I'm going to be a star. I got to be a star.
No, as I recall,
I want to be a
no,
star.
Keith,
And
Keith,
Dr. Thornton
Keith.
always raved about Michelle Miller. Dr. Thornton was always Michelle Miller, this, Michelle Miller, that. Michelle Miller, this, Michelle Miller. And Dr. Cog was, do I sound jealous? No. But I was trying, I wanted to get to where Michelle Miller and Stanley Barrett were and are today. They were the stars in college, and look at them now.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to throw that out there. I see Mr. Wesley Lowry's in the audience too. I see Wes. There you go, Wes.
Hey!
All right.
Oh! He and I used to work together, but I hardly ever see him.
He's a man. He's a man about town.
He was a 60 Minutes correspondent.
Yes. And left us to go for the Washington Post to go 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
You know, he's just a star, man about town.
Yes.
We have another question.
Another question. Sorry, Ryan.
Sorry.
You heard the
We
voice-
digress.
You heard the voice of God come through. Yes, sir.
You see, don't you think you belong now?
Say again.
You belong now.
Aw.
See here. Okay, this may be a little deep, but do you think, well, because I'm latching on to the word belonging. You think your mother, first that part about it, your mother didn't feel that she belonged in that family with you, is one thing that I get from it. But also, do you feel with that meeting with your mother, were you hoping to belong a little bit to her?
Yeah, I'm sure
While
I
you're there.
was. It's still, you know, it's funny. I always think of people who write books as having it all wrapped up so nicely and neatly, and they have it all together, and they're espousing all of their wisdom on people who come to have conversations with them. But yes, I suppose I was. I don't know. I'm still grappling with. But yeah, all of that to say yes.
I see some questions right here. Some Hilltoppers. Hilltop editor-in-chief is right here. This lady right here. And so they have some questions.
Hello, my name is Jasper. I'm a junior at Howard, and yes, I am the editor-in-chief at the Hilltop. I'm very excited to read your book and to hear, all your wonderful Hilltop experiences on top of just your life experiences. But I wanted to know if you can talk a little bit about how the Hilltop prepared you for what you're doing now. We do have a few Hilltoppers in the audience, but I just personally wanted to know this for sure.
So the best thing about the Hilltop was rapid fire and pitching stories to the editors. I'm still very good friends with the city editor of the time. It was Quay Noel Kelch, Quay Maddox. She the stories that I did, I would do a story every week, and you guys are daily now.
The weekly.
You're still weekly? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I just think, having the repetitive nature of writing, like every week, alongside having my assignments, having my labs, having to work, having to commute, it was just like I felt like I was engaged in real life. I had the job at the Hilltop, and I also wrote for the community news. I also was working internships. So it just kind of developed this on-the-go rapid speed that I still seem to, I haven't shaken to this day. People think I'm nuts because I'm always on the go. But it was something that I think I developed this need for speed at Howard University.
But what's also interesting is that you're a broadcast journalist, but you have a lot of print background.
This is
Can you
true.
talk a little bit about why that is?
So, because Dr. Cogwa said you had to learn how to write. That's why. He said, you broadcast journalists, if you don't know how to write, you aren't going to know how to be great journalists. And I'll never forget that it was Carol Simpson who told me that when I threw that at her, she said, okay, you do know that writing for print is a very different style than writing for broadcast. And I said, well, writing is writing. She said, no, it's not. I was interning at ABC News Nightline, and she drilled it down to me. Do not think for a minute that a print journalist is any better than a broadcast journalist, because then you were selling yourself short. If that's what you want to do, make sure you were clear. You are just as good as a print journalist. I was like, okay. I then remember going to the LA Times, and I guess I carry forth with me that voice of a broadcast journalist writer, a television writer. And one of the best writers at the LA Times was a feature writer. Her name was Nikki, oh gosh, I can't remember her last name. But she was a spitfire, and not in a really nice way. It's probably good I don't remember her name.
Block it out.
But she was brilliant at writing. And so I said to her on my last day, I wrote her a little email, or an office email, and I said, do you have any words of wisdom? And she said, I would tell you that if you're going to write for print, stop using the spoken voice. I was like, I am not going to be a print reporter, because, it's just.
What does that mean?
She was basically telling me I was writing in a style that was a broadcast style. And if I really wanted to be a print writer, I needed to stop that. So I said, oh, well, now I've developed the broadcast style of writing. Just hit the road and don't look back. I think I was looking for validation, because being a print reporter, I think there's a certain cachet of respect that goes along with it. I think people at that time kind of looked down on broadcast journalists because they felt as though they hadn't earned it. And by that time, I had worked with some of the best broadcast journalists, from Carol Simpson to Ted Capel, Sam Donaldson to George Strait to people who were in the DC area, Jim Vance and the like. Mike Wilbon would go from print to broadcast. But all of that to say that I gained a respect for my craft. And one of the really interesting reasons I got an internship at the Star Tribune, the person who was looking for, who I guess it was in charge of the summer internships, he said, you're a broadcast journalism major. And I said, yes. And he said, well, why should we hire you? And I was, this is when I was still fearless, when I was in college, before I hit that slump when we hit real life and we get kicked. Yeah, right. And I said to him, I'm a journalist. don't you want to help train the best journalists? Broadcast, print, what have you? I will have been trained by the Star Tribune. He said, okay now. And off I went to Minneapolis. And probably one of the great stories in the book is what happened when we were welcomed by one of the senior level executives at the paper. And there was an epiphany there, and I'll leave that for you to read.
Got time for 2 more questions, and we'll wrap it up. Who got the mic? And there's a question down here, I think, and then we'll come back over. And there's a young lady right here has a question too. Where's Ryan? The voice. Okay, we'll come over here and then come over here.
One last question.
Can this young lady right here has been so patient? How about one last one? Come on, Miss Editor. One more question. Right there you go. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Over here.
Oh, okay. Wow, I guess I'm on.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for writing this book.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your vulnerability
Thank you.
and for sharing your story. You may not realize how many people, or maybe you do realize at this point, how many people are touched by your book. I'm certainly touched by your book.
Thank you.
What was the hardest part of writing? Because we all know 5 minutes on TV is one thing, but a whole book is another.
I know. I think getting over someone using my story to hurt me. You know, when you put yourself out there, and I still fear somebody's going to, take something in my book and then turn it around or repurpose it in some way and throw it back at me. In fact, it goes back to, I don't think the intent of the person who interviewed me today was to hurt me, but it was clearly, it could have. I just have to be on guard about that and make sure that, my words aren't twisted because I chose to speak my truth. And my truth is my truth. I'm still a human. I'm still a human being, and I'm still one who has a point of view. But I think I'm just transparent about it. And I also, it's one reason I try to stay out of politics, because it's, government is different from politics in my point of view. I mean, when you're running for, there's certain things when you're doing certain things, you can tell people's stories who happen to be trying to engage in something. Yes, there are people who are in agreement with it or not, but that's different from the political spectrum of a race, an election, voting, that kind of thing. Although I do stories on voting rights, because I think voting rights, look, the First Amendment is sacred to me. It just is. A lot of people hold a couple of other amendments more sacred than the First Amendment, but that's my number one amendment. The one that I think, without, we would not be living in a democracy. But let's be really clear on what this democracy was set up and who was set up for. And it was set up for people who own property, men who own property, and just some white men who own property. Because the first people to earn, fight for, and run away with their right to vote were white men who didn't have the right to vote. And I think if more people understood how hard it was for those people, for those men to earn, to fight for, to die for their right to vote, the respect for the rest of us would also be very clear. Because it was not an easy right. It wasn't even a right given to everybody. And I don't think that sinks in. We had to really engage to become citizens. Not just black people who were formerly slaves, not just women, not just all the other people who got a shot after we got the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in in 1964 and 65? No. A whole slew of other people who assumed they had the right from the inception of this nation, and they didn't. They didn't either. And so, yeah, I say things like that. I think they're truths. They are true. That's history.
Yes, that's right. This young lady right here has a question right here. And somebody just gets, young lady, then we'll come to the last, you'll have the last question, young man, okay?
Hi, my name is Dee, and my question to you is there any God journey in what you are seeking and striving for? Is God anywhere in your story?
Is
God in my journey. Am I a Christian? Am I a spiritualist? Am I what? What are you asking me?
I picked it up when you were talking about your husband. You said many things, but I didn't hear you say anything about spirituality, God, religion, none of that. So is any of that in your journey from childhood, adulthood, and moving forward?
Yeah, it weaves in and out. Questions, yeah.
Yes.
I
She
can't
talked about how blessed
remember.
she is, yes.
I can't remember. I have a lot of questions about, like, I was raised, no. I was raised Baptist. I was married by a Catholic and a Baptist minister. I was, and, I have been to many churches in my lifetime, and I have been through many Bible studies in my lifetime, but I am still questioning. I think that is a truthful answer to your question.
No wrong, amen, thank you. And last question, young brother here. Thank you for your question. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Juan. I am also a staff writer at the Hilltop. I write for the culture section. And I just wanted to ask you, because I'm a junior, I'll be graduating next year, and just thinking about, your whole career from your time writing at the Hilltop to now at CBS, what is like the one piece of advice that you wish that you would have been given when you were a budding journalist, when you graduated from Howard?
Question.
The one
One.
piece of advice. I was given a lot of advice. My generation was always told you have to be twice as good to get half as far. I would tell you to dream and hope and pray. And I say that because my prayer is speaking to the universe. I say things out loud, and I thank, the universe for a lot. And everything I have asked for from the universe has come back to me, which is why I say I'm blessed. I'm still questioning, like, a lot of these faiths that I've had. I've lived in Muslim communities. I've lived in Christian community. I've lived kind of a spiritualist, a varied spiritualist journey, but I haven't figured all of that out either. And I think, it goes toward that leap of faith and not having the answer and being okay with it, right? So I don't know if I have that's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for you other than go out and create the life you want. Make sure you help someone along the way. Make sure you know that you don't need to do it by yourself. When you need to ask for help, do it. And always bring someone along with you.
Yeah. We are going to give you, before we wrap up, we want to give you the final word, Michelle Miller, the final word of the night. Anything that you want to say to?
I want to say thank you. I really have. I've been overwhelmed by the support from people who not only have come out and have said to me, this is my story. I was left behind. I was abandoned. I am estranged. I feel absence. So I always knew that there were other people out there like me, and other people out there who were yearning. And I just want to say that, part of why it was necessary to kind of like tell all in the way that I did was because, there was a lot of shame assigned to my early childhood. And I don't think anybody should feel ashamed of who they are, for what they are, for why they are. And it angers me. It angers me. There are a lot of things that anger me, and they all have to do with people being intolerant of other people for reasons that they think they're right. I don't like people labeling me. I don't like people thinking they know who I am. I don't like people defining me in a light that I don't define myself, which is why I don't truly have answers to a lot of the questions out there, because I'm still questioning myself. I am not a finished product. And I'm still working on a lot of things. I wish I were as fabulous as some of our fabulous people out there, but I'm a work in progress. And I'm thankful and grateful that I am as blessed as I am. And despite all that, I have a really amazing life that I created because I was willing not to be defined by my circumstances. And I was really good at getting help from some fabulous people because I asked for it or they offered it to me, and I didn't say no. I was never too proud to take what someone was willing to offer me, and I was never too afraid to stand up for myself when I really needed to stand and take the whip. So I encourage all of you, some of you are much further along in your journey than I am. Some of you are just starting. But it's like that old saying, you gotta know when to hold them, you gotta know when to fold them, you gotta know when to walk away.
Know when to run.
And you gotta know when to run. And you gotta know when to stand up, stand tall, speak up, speak out, help learn, help motivate. And I just want us to know how we are all connected. We are all connected. And if the sooner we learn that, the better off we're gonna be. Because we don't have much more time on this planet if we don't get that. That is a fact.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Miller, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.